have words. We're gonna talk it out.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Have Words. I'm your host, Lara Samuels. Let's Have Words is a talk show that comes to you every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on WWHR Internet Media. We are a new show. This is going to be our third episode tonight. We're a variety show. We are a talk show. We cover a variety of topics from, the mundane to the profound. You never know what you're going to hear about on Let's Have Words. A little bit of history. So at one time, we were actually a poetry open mic that occurred every Wednesday night at the Hearing Room, which was an art center in Lowell, Massachusetts. And it was an open mic for poetry, also spoken word, stuff like that. And after COVID, we went online and we were in Zoom for a little while, and we were still doing poetry and spoken word. And then we retired the program for a little bit, and now it has been fully resurrected as a talk show. Goodness knows how that actually occurred, but that's what we are now. So the format is basically, we have a guest every week that, I'll interview. And then we also have people call in or chat in with questions and comments. So about halfway through the show or so, I'll open up the phones, open up the chat, and people can call in or chat in with questions and comments for our guest today. So last week, you never know what you're going to get on Let's Have Words. Okay, let's just face it. Last week, we talked with Lee Webster, who is a funeral reform advocate, and she talked to us about green burials. It was a really fascinating show, and a lot of stuff, really informative. It was a wonderful show. So, and the week before that, we talked with Joel of Porto, who talked to us a little bit about bluegrass music. And this week, we're going to be speaking with Carrie Howard. She's a licensed professional counselor from Wisconsin, and she is going to be talking to us today about the disturbing rise in teenage anxiety and depression. So that's going to be our topic for the day. I was thinking about it all week. I've been thinking about it all week because I was going to do the show. And I was thinking about my own experiences when I was a teenager and how different it must be for teens now, I remember, being a very self-conscious teenager. I don't know about you, but when I was a teenager, I was incredibly self-conscious, and I was always worried about, and I think this is typical, obviously, I was always worried about what my peers were thinking about me, my clothes or the way I looked or something I said. And I was thinking about how now, of course, with social media, that's amplified like 10 times, Now, whether or not social media is actually contributing to the rise, the documented rise, by the way, in teen anxiety and depression, whether or not that's actually a contributing factor, I think the jury is still out. I think the research is still being done, right? And the results are mixed. So, but certainly, I think it's a no-brainer that that's really got to have a profound effect on the teenage experience these days, with it being so prevalent, and getting likes and all that, right? So some people think that social media plays a heavy role. And also, school shootings, maybe feeling unsafe, feeling like the world is an unsafe place. I remember feeling fairly secure when I was a teenager. The school shooting thing wasn't as prevalent, and it didn't feel like it was, a huge threat. So I think that it may be contributing a little bit, and I think that some people speculate. Nobody really knows why. So these are just some things I was thinking about that might contribute to it, and I think a lot of people are, formulating hypotheses about some of the causes. And also, an increase in expectations. I mean, when I was a kid, my parents let me do whatever the heck I wanted to, but they were pretty. I had some serious laissez-faire parents, but still, I don't feel like the pressures were there to necessarily. It wasn't like you had, ballet on Monday and, chorus on Tuesday and soccer on Wednesday. It didn't feel like there was all this pressure, and with the importance of testing and all that. It didn't feel like there was all that pressure to prove yourself. So I think that might be also an issue. But just like anything, double-edged sword, right? I mean, I think it's important for kids to develop skills, and and testing can be a good way of, I guess, I don't know, we can have another show about that, whether or not testing is actually an effective way of measuring performance. But definitely all of that there may be some good things about that, but it's also definitely maybe contributing to feelings of anxiety among teens. So I'm a teacher. I think this affects all of us, because whether or not you're a parent, it doesn't matter, if you're a parent or whatever. I mean, a lot of us, whether you're working with people in this age group, and I think this extends not just teenagers, but millennials in general. So people that are young, people in their 20s are probably in the same demographic, the same types of pressures on them too. So a lot of us work with young people. In my case, I teach adults, but many of my students are in their early 20s. And I've just kind of noticed, this is just, I'm teaching for 30 years as a population, and I've kind of noticed that as students seem a lot more fragile to me. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that. I'll talk to Carrie a little bit about that too. But a lot of my students, they seem very fragile. I get a lot more crying in my office. I didn't used to get very much of that, and I feel like it's more acceptable for that to occur. And whether that's good or bad, I mean, in some ways, I think the fact that we're more open about our feelings and we talk to each other more about mental illness and that the destigmatization and all that, I think that's good. But I don't think that, but I also think it's a little uncomfortable, let's just put it that way, for somebody who's not necessarily used to dealing with that. So I don't know. I think that learning how to, how to understand teenagers, what their experiences are, how they're feeling, and can help us, to communicate better. So I'm hoping that Carrie can maybe give us a little bit of insight into some techniques, some methods that might work, for as far as communicating and understanding, how young people are feeling. It's definitely different. I mean, no matter what, you can talk about why, what are the causes and everything, but certainly teenagers today have a completely different experience than we did when we were growing up. I'm 53, so I grew up, I was a teenager in like the 80s, right? So completely different world, for sure. So these are just some of the things that are bouncing around in my brains and ricocheting around in there. So we're going to talk to Carrie about all those things. I'm going to bring her on in just a moment. I do want to remind you that about halfway through, I'll be opening up the phones, opening up the chat. And if you want to call in, you want to chat in, and with questions or comments, please feel free to do that. So the link is down there on the screen. You can see it. And that's the link you would use if you wanted to actually have your video on. And then if you'd like to just ask a question in chat or post a comment in chat, you can just post that on YouTube or on whatever platform you happen to be watching the show on. So, and we'll get the message and we will answer it, hopefully. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to invite my guest for the night. This is Carrie Howard. She is an LPC, licensed professional counselor.
Hello.
And there she is. And I suppose, for full disclosure, we've known each other for a long time.
Just a few years.
Just a few years, yeah. Carrie and I actually we met when we were about 12, right? Am I wrong? She's better with the timeline.
No, you're right. We met when we were about 12. That's true.
About 12 years old. So we grew up together. We had the teenage experience together.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you agree. Do you think that teenagers now have a completely different experience than we did when we were.
I do.
teens.
I do. I think they absolutely have a different experience than we did.
Yeah.
We were in this. Sorry, I'm eating my hair. We
That's
were.
okay.
Again, I tend to look at the whole experience of the kids nowadays. I mean, the first generation you see, like my daughter, is coming up with having had a cell phone at a fairly young age, whereas we were, you know, we were, the way we weren't as connected as these kids are by far, by a million miles away from actually having that kind of connectivity.
Right.
So yeah, no, I think that tends to kick in with a lot of different issues when you're talking about how kids are growing up these days.
Yeah. Well, especially like the social media piece, just like how I was thinking about how public, you know, your everything you say, everything you do, you know, what you look like, you know, it's just it's out there, and that's just got to amplify. I mean, you already have. I think it's It's typical for teenagers.
Yep.
To have these feelings, no matter what generation you're talking about, but then it gets amplified by the social media experience, I think.
Well, yeah, and I think that for girls too, just speaking to the gender difference as well.
Girls,
I mean, like boys will tend to be more aggressive. So like as opposed to women, girls tend to be more relational. So we'll do things like make a new friend and invite that friend out and leave the old friend at home, kind of thing. And back in the day, that you might not know that until you found out about it at school or you found out about it online. Nowadays, that person's posting pictures on Facebook and they're doing,
right.
You know, so you know about it instantaneously. And there's that whole fear of missing out. You know, the comparison, kids are doing a lot of comparisons on what they see on social media, all the what do they call them, the influencers, all those posts and whatnot. I mean, there are actually, or even when you go back to the way we can now manipulate our own faces via different types of face apps and whatnot to make it look so much better than, or so much different than what we are. I mean, there's been an increase with plastic surgeons being asked to, here's my face using this app. Can you make me look like that? Wow. So there's a lot. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a lot. I mean, and like I said, these kids, they're on 24/7. They know what's going on almost immediately. Everything is right at their fingertips. I mean, we have this lovely phone in our hands. We didn't have that growing up. I mean, so they have basically a computer in their hands that they can Google, check, look. I mean, so it can be. I think it really is significant to the anxiety that these kids are feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're not. I guess the jury's still out on whether or not social media is even contributing to this problem. But it seems like a no-brainer to me.
Oh no, I think the jury's in. I think that
so?
definitely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think that definitely kids are. Because we're seeing that across the board. This rise of anxiety, this rise of depression, this rise of people not. Again, the kids are a little bit more, you use the word fragile, but what it is, I think, is it's just anxious. They're the fear of failure on some level as well, because again, they're holding themselves up. And when we were kids, we didn't necessarily do that 24/7. I mean, we as I think we're referred to as Generation X. So we're supposedly the generation who doesn't give a shit about much, but
I think that's apt.
Well, I mean, I think that this generation though is that they're always kind of like comparing themselves to something else. And I think that really does get pinned on social media. I mean, think about all the Instagram, Facebook, Snap. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that these kids are spread out over, and they're getting all kinds of information and all kinds of feedback on, and if they're not getting the feedback, which is immediate, like you post a picture of yourself on Instagram and people are just hitting you like constantly about like, ooh, snap me back, or would you want to like model for my yada yada? And some of it, of course, is bullshit, but some of it is actually people out there like, and so again, they get all that ooh, I must look good, right? But
so tell us a little bit. So obviously so in your practice, you work with mostly teenagers. Are they most of your clients are teenagers?
Actually, I have a pretty good mixed bag right now. So I have two practices. One is in I live in Wisconsin in one area, and I have practice in another area. So I've got two separate locations, and I do have a pretty healthy level of kids, teenagers most likely, most teenagers in my practice, and then I also have a lot of adults going through a variety of different things as well. I'm also seeing a lot of adults who are recently being diagnosed with various things like ADHD, or finding out that they're getting tested and finding out they're actually on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
But they weren't diagnosed back in the day.
Adults are using a lot of social media too, but it probably doesn't affect them quite the same way. Or are these trends also occurring in adults?
Well, I think that it's interesting because you'll see a lot of adults doing various things. I mean, some adults get into that kind of thing, especially during the pandemic, because TikTok was a huge thing during the pandemic.
Right.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but because people were like locked up, pandemic, you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything. So they were doing a lot of stuff on TikTok, on various social media, just to continue to interact, FaceTiming, just to make sure that we were connecting with people. So I think that we saw a lot of that. As far as do adults live as vicariously as teenagers? I would say no. I think that teenagers, because again, we're a little older, we're a little bit more. I'm not going to generalize and say everybody, but we seem to have, if you're stable, I would say, like, if you're unstable, if you're leaning towards that, like people who are very have a lot of they're introverted, they might lean towards social media to find, to have an outlet or to create a persona that they may enjoy more than they enjoy their own, who they are, so to speak. So that can happen. But I think I don't know that statistically they're being as affected as kids are, as teenagers are. I mean, you could also look at the way, the internet, we can look at incels and all that other stuff that kind of, people who can't really engage, don't feel able to engage because of whatever's going on. Like I said, the introversion or the social anxiety. And so they can find their niche or find their network or people, so to speak. And unfortunately, if it's a negative thing, it can get a lot negative.
Yeah. Well, teenagers too are searching for their identity, right? Is that if I have my Mike Erickson right, they're searching for their identity, and older adults really we've established our identity, so that that plays into that too. I think
Yeah.
With the effect of social media.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think that where adults tend to use it more, I want to say as more fun to some degree, as a distraction, whereas kids, I think it really, if you ask them, I mean, like I said, I think I'm on, I say on, but I'm not really on that much social media per se. But I mean, if I look at my kids, I mean, my daughter and her friends or whatever, they're definitely on social media more significantly than I am, for sure.
What is so? Do you think there's some other things that might be contributing to the rise? I mean, well, first of all, is there an actual rise in a documented rise in anxiety and depression among teens? Okay,
so suicide right now, depression actually. I'm sorry, depression. I was looking at both suicide and depression rise. Depression actually increased by about 52% between 2005 and 2017 among adolescents aged 12 to 17.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a fairly significant
huge
increase.
Right. That's huge.
And it increased by 63% between 2009 and 2017 and young adults age 18 to 25. So that's a pretty jump, in what? That's less than 15 years for sure.
Yeah. No, that's a huge that's astounding actually.
Yeah.
I deliberately did not look at the statistics myself so that I could be genuinely shocked, because that I am. I mean, that's just.
Yeah. And in January, was it 41%? January of 2021. So January 2021, this year, 41% of adults reported symptoms of anxiety and or depressive disorder, which had been, and that's been relatively stable. So when you're talking about like depression, I mean, there's been a fairly large increase over the past few years. Yeah. And of course, the pandemic has also caused problems because we pulled the kids out of school. We all kind of hunkered down. We're not able to see people. We're not be able to socialize. We can't engage. There's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, none of us have lived through a pandemic.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of fear and anxiety with regards to what comes next. It keeps coming back. Like that's just wave after wave.
That's just like another layer on the cake. That like it was already bad, and then the pandemic just another layer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so you're looking at those levels are definitely going up. When I talk to kids, and then again, you're looking at the kids, so the kids and the parents are kind of in the same boat in this area.
Yeah.
And parents, of course, I mean, what did they bring? Work instability, monetary instability, financial instability,
right.
Just all that other. So kids are also having a hard time sometimes engaging with their parents because their parents are also stressed out.
You're right.
You know, so they don't have if they don't feel like, and kids are
support
notorious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if they're notorious for just kind of sucking it in, especially for kids who are in that teenage year when they're looking for all that autonomy and they're trying to kind of distance themselves from their parents, which is a perfectly normal situation.
Of course.
But the parents are like, you know, when your kid does that, like I said, it's normal. And I've worked a lot with parents who I think to some degree like, you know, they worry about their child doing normal things and interpreting it as depression, because there could be a fine line between I'm isolating because I'm 16
right.
and I don't want to admit that you're my parent and I hate my family.
Yeah, that's going to be tough to tease that out, like what's actually depression versus just normal teen behavior. And same thing with anxiety, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be hard to diagnose.
Yeah. And a lot of times and then again, if parents are distracted because they're trying to put food on the table, they're trying to pay the bills, they're trying to do X, Y, and Z, then I mean, they may not notice, or, you know, if the kid's being quiet in their room, they may not catch on that something else is something that's going on. You know?
They'll just think they're being moody, or they're just being, just being normal teenagers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and understandably, it's got to be tough for parents,
And I think go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask, so we've been focusing a lot on sort of social media and stuff. Do you think, so some of the other things I was thinking about, because I was trying to make a list of potential reasons. Bless you. Salute. Potential reasons. And I thought, you know, when I was thinking about like higher expectations, I mean, what do you think? Do you think that is playing a role too? Like all the testing and I don't know. I don't have kids, so I don't really know, you know, if that's just a perceived thing, or if that's actually true that kids have a lot more, you know, pressure.
I think there's a lot more perception of, you know, like that the idea that, I mean, even when we were in school, I suppose, or like in you know, Generation X, the idea that, you know, you get a job, you go to school, you'll be okay. You know, you're going to come out the other end of it and you'll be okay. I think that was more prevalent for us than it was for the kids that are coming up behind us. Or for the next generations, they're looking at, I mean, like, you know, if you're looking at the news, they're talking about like the Great Resignation, people who are, I mean, the highest educated group of people, I think, coming up behind us. And they're finally kind of taking into consideration the fact that they don't necessarily want to put up with some of the stuff that we put up with, you know?
Right.
So again, you know, you're seeing, I think they're feeling the pressure of, well, we can't achieve, you know, if rents for, you know, for a 2-bedroom apartment are $2,000, depending on where you are, how am I going to ever pay, or, you know, make enough money to pay for a house, you know?
Right.
That concept. So again, they might, on one level, they don't want to be treated like garbage, which I totally get. But on the other level, they also don't see a way that they can feasibly, you know, do better. I mean, that was always the plan, right? We're supposed to do better than our parents did. And a lot of these kids don't see that happening because they can't afford to have that life.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of pressure in that sense. I mean, the testing and the things going through school, I mean, I see, usually the kids that I see already have anxiety. Those tests are part of that anxiety, but it's not usually the crux of it. Right. It's part of it. I see kids trying to, like, that perfectionism piece is a piece of and that's of course based on anxiety as well. They feel like they have to do perfect, or they don't feel good enough on a lot of different levels. And sometimes that's based on it could be based on just, again, like, you know, the way their placement in the family, if something's going on in the family. I worked with another group when I was working for Health Human Services in this area. I was actually a child psychotherapist here. And we worked specifically with, like, the children that were called in from the schools or the doctors or whatever. And they were the ones that were just starting to seeing glimmers of problems. So the idea was to get in there beforehand.
Get early. Yeah, get early
Get it,
intervention.
yeah. So we would actually go in and start engaging with the kids, but we would also meet with the family. So we were basically trying to engage with the family and the children at the same time and give everyone tools and ways of communicating and talking so that they could offset that. But also if the family was having problems, if there was issues with financial issues or medical issues or child care, anything, they could talk to us about that, and we could try and see if there were community resources that they could utilize that would alleviate some of that stress. Stress is a huge thing, and we're seeing a lot of that across the board with, like I said, families all around.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I hesitate to ask this question because I'm afraid it'll make me sound like a jerk. But
go ahead.
I'm wondering if all the I want to phrase this properly, and I know I won't. If all this attention on mental illness is actually contributing to that, like I don't want to make it sound like it's but sometimes I feel like kids have that language now, you know what I mean? Like they're always saying, I'm anxious, I'm this, and it's almost like it might be exacerbating the problem. Maybe. I mean, I want people obviously that are having anxiety and depression to get help, but perhaps there's a lot of, I don't know what you would call it, exaggeration.
Well, it's kind of like,
especially among teenagers who love to take advantage of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know?
So, I mean, a lot of times, I think that what you see sometimes is kids do, they have the lingo, they really do.
Yeah.
Some kids use really horrifying words, and we take it seriously because we have to. So if I have a kid who says, I'm feeling suicidal, yeah, I'm in it. I mean, I have to get, so like when I have a child, an adolescent or an underage, a minor in my office, and we sign paperwork with that person, it says, I want them to have confidentiality. So I explain to their parents that, like, I stay with this kid, but if they talk about if they talk about suicide, hurting themselves, hurting somebody else, child abuse issues or court order, that I'm going to end up going to the parents or talk. I have to break confidentiality at that point. And they sign off on that. So I say that in front of the child too. Like, look, if you're talking about killing yourself, then we have to go and do something about this. And I don't really futz around with that. So
no, you can't.
So usually,
you can't,
no,
right?
I can't.
You can't.
So a lot of times, if a kid says to me, like, I'm really feeling like I'm sad, I'm depressed, or I'm asking that question, are you having thoughts of? And kids, if you kind of lay the line down with them, and again, in that sense, I don't mean a negative way, but if you tell me this is what you're thinking about, I'm going to absolutely do everything I possibly can to help you. Right. But we have to kind of talk about that. Are you feeling bad, or are you actually feeling suicidal?
Right.
You know,
are you just is this?
Because I'll help you either way.
Yourself? Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna do whatever I can, but I need to make sure that I need to understand what's happening, because sometimes kids do go, and if they do, you have no choice but to go with them.
And you feel like most of the time they're honest, and they'll tell you if they are exaggerating for effect or for drama.
It's hard to tell, especially with that phrase. I think a lot of times when you're talking about kids who have anxiety, or they'll talk about being depressed, and then when you're walking them through it, like, again, there's an all or nothing mindset. So, I had an absolutely crap day today. Everything sucked. Okay, well, what happened? And they tell me about something that happened at 9:00 this morning. I'm like, okay, that sounds really bad. So what happened the rest of the day? Oh, the rest of the day was fine.
Yeah,
that's what happened. 9:00 to 10:30, it was a crap day. What happened for the rest of the day that made it horrible? And really what we're then working on is the fact that they're carrying it with them, or they're just remembering that negative part. And that's the problem, because we're geared to remember the negative, not the positive.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's a human trait. We remember the negative, or even the negative self-talk kind of stuff, which is really prevalent in kids and adults, for that matter.
Yeah.
So the usage of, they know the words, they're using the words, and I think that some of them blow it up. Yeah, probably. I think some of them do, but the fact is that you still have to react to that. Like, you can't, if a kid comes in my office and says, "Oh my God,
yeah,
I had super anxiety today, and I was throwing up, and I was doing this, and I was doing that," I'm not going to be like, "Oh, yeah."
Well, of course, right, exactly. You can't. So it doesn't matter, really.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter to you in your
down.
practice, because you have to act no matter what, whether it's.
Yeah, but I will try and
pretend.
Right. But I will try and bring them, okay, let's talk about that. Let's find out what that meant. Because you're right. Sometimes kids use that boom kind of.
I was a dramatic kid, so I can relate to that.
So was I.
You know, I was always drawing pictures of like blood dripping off swords and things, and
Yeah. And again, I mean, and the great thing about that is to ask, like, oh, so you've got this really bloody sword. That's really interesting. What about that? Let's talk about what's going on here.
Yeah. I'm sure you're great at that. You're good because great at talking specifically to teenagers. I bet they
I like
relate
teenagers.
to you. You can relate to
They will tell you their
teens.
shit. They will tell you. I mean, they will. I mean, as long as when I work with teenagers specifically, and a lot of them are just angry. A lot of them are really angry. A lot of them are angry and freaked out, and they don't know which way to go, and they're not. And again, things aren't. Some of them are socially awkward. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
And I always talk about the fact that I think we forget something with kids specifically, is that like we're of an age where if something happens, it might suck really badly. I mean, if let's just say something hard happens, and it hurts. We deal with that because we're of an age right now where we've had to deal with things for over half a century at this point. We've built up that, not the thick skin, but the experiences,
coping mechanisms in place.
Coping mechanisms. Exactly. And experiences that we've dealt with it, right?
Yeah.
These kids, all of the stuff that they feel, brand new.
Yeah.
Brand new. They don't know what it's like to feel these things. And you have to remember, I mean, it's hard. If you can remember being a teenager, everything was super important. Everything was super dramatic.
Right,
everything was outrageously.
Yeah.
And that was for us back then, but for them in this world, it's even, I think, because of the uncertainty in the world of itself. I mean, it can get very scary for them. I mean, school shootings. We didn't think about school shootings.
Right. I brought that up in my monologue too. Like, that wasn't something that was ever on our minds.
No. Now we have active shootings, things going on, Alice training going on in the school system.
Right. And the lockdown, that they do the drills and everything. That's got to be really stressful.
Yeah. I mean, my stepdaughter went through one of those as well with someone attacked one of the resource officers. Yeah. And then they evacuated the school. They didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, it's talk about raised anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I just want to say to everybody, this is Let's Have Words, and we're talking to Carrie Howard. She is a wonderful person, a WP, a wonderful person. But in addition to that, she is a licensed professional counselor, an LPC, and she works in Wisconsin. She works out of Wisconsin, and she works with a mix of adults and teenagers. But we are talking mostly about teenage, the rise, the trend, in increases in teenage depression and anxiety. I am going to open the phones, the chat. So if anybody wants to chat or call in, I believe that there is a link. So that's if you're brave and you actually want to come on the show with us and talk to us a little bit, that is the link. If you're brave but you don't want to do that, then you can chat. You can put your question or comment in the chat. We'd be happy, and I'll see it on the screen, and we'll be happy to entertain some thoughts surrounding your questions. All right. So just a reminder that that when you if you come on the show or if you call in, just be nice, be concise, and we're going to continue our conversation either way. Oh, there's rule number 1. And rule number 2.
Be nice, be concise, be nice.
Be nice and be concise. What do you think of that, Carrie? Those are my 2 rules for the show.
I think those are pretty good. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Don't be horrible and be concise.
And be brief. Yeah.
I can ramble.
Oh, we can both ramble.
I'll try not to.
We can ramble. We could have a ramble on, a ramble off. A ramble on, a ramble off. All right. So I do want to move. So we definitely have established that this is a problem for sure. We're not sure what the causes are, a lot of contributing factors. So what I like, the particular thing that I want to know is so I was telling in my monologue, I was talking about how I talked to a lot of my students are in their early 20s. So they're not teenagers, but they're in that demographic. They're millennials. Mm-hmm. And I often feel like I don't have the words. I want to be because they'll come in with this didn't happen 30 years ago. I've been working with teaching adults for a while, and suddenly they'll come in, they'll be crying, they'll be upset, they'll have issues like anxiety, and they'll say things like, "This is triggering me," and "That's triggering me," and or whatever, and I don't have the skill set to like communicate with them. You know what I mean? So I'm just I try to be compassionate and I do my best or whatever, but I just always feel a little awkward. And I got to say, once again, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but I want to say part of me just wants to say, suck it up. I do. I just want to say that to them. And I think that's definitely the tough love approach is probably not effective. So how could you help, how could you help me to make, do you have any suggestions or any techniques I might be able to use?
Well,
to
one of the things
to
that
them?
if somebody's coming in and they're already upset and already stressed out, I would suggest really just kind of approaching it like, okay, so right now is not the best time for you to have this conversation. It sounds like obviously you're all ready. So, and I want to talk to you, but I want to talk to you when you're able to be calm with this. So maybe walk around, come back in, maybe go for a walk with them if they need to. A lot of times when you walk with people, let's just go for a walk. Like even if it's in your building, I understand winter, obviously New England, but going for a walk with people sometimes lets them kind of breathe. And I wouldn't engage, let's just walk and breathe for a little bit. Let's just do that. And then when we're instead of being face to face like this, we're like this. So we can walk along. Let's get a soda. Let's talk. Let's make it like kind of less stressed out, less face to face. Tell me what's going on, and let's see where we can go with that. But you need to kind of establish the fact that I can't talk to you. I can listen, but you're already up here. I need you here so we can communicate. So what's going to do better? Let's get out of the office. Like I said, go around for a walk on the hallway. Go get a drink at the I don't know what your school looks like. Go get a drink at the vending machine, whatever. But that sitting face to face kind of thing, in some instances when people are already elevated, simply elevates them more. And when you're engaging with them, like, okay, they're also they don't want to feel like that, so they're embarrassed that they're doing that. Right. So like stepping them out of that might be helpful.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's good. Practical advice.
Yep. And really, it's up to them. You don't have to. It's okay if you're like too escalated right now to have a conversation. That's absolutely fine. Just go take a minute for yourself, and you can come back and talk to me when you're ready, or text me if you can't talk to me like this.
So it's okay to say that. It's not dismissive or something to say that.
No.
You don't think. Yeah. Okay.
No, you reiterate. I mean, I want to hear this. I absolutely want to hear this. But obviously, you're having a rough time with it. So if you need to calm down and come back, that's fine. If you want to just text me, that's fine, or email me, that's fine. Whatever's going to work for you. Right. But it's not dismissive to say that.
Right. Got it. Okay. Cool. Well, that's good. That's some practical advice. So I think we have David coming in. There he is.
Hi.
This is David Barkman. He's a friend.
Hello.
He's a friend of the show.
Friend of the show.
Hello, David.
A friend of the show.
Yeah.
This is Carrie Howard.
Hi, Carrie.
So
Well,
do you have
it's
a
gonna
question,
It's
comment?
going to be really difficult to follow Kaylin's rules because being concise and nice are two things that are really hard for me. So,
No, I don't think so. I don't think either one.
so what you're talking about strikes very close to home.
Okay.
I have some teenage grandchildren who are really in the midst of all of this.
Yeah.
I can only see from a distance because they live quite a distance away, but I certainly have seen the effect of social media where somebody posts pictures of a party that they weren't invited to and how crushing that is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good example.
More recently, just on social media, my 14-year-old grandson was pretty much devastated by a social media post from one of his supposed friends, which was very, very hurtful. And here he is, 14, just entering high school, very insecure. And this was really a slanderous post. It was taken down pretty quickly, but a lot of people saw it. And then I guess to kind of live it down or whatever. He was fortunate that he had a lot of support from friends, but he was really kind of knocked on his butt. But there are two girls, twins, who are now seniors, and they are like poster kids for exactly the anxiety issues that you're talking about. And their mother, my daughter, is very stressed out. And just to give a full picture of the stew here, the father is no longer alive. And before he died, there was a not very pleasant divorce with lots of scars that left from that. The
Wow.
So she's taking care of the family by herself, and she's the breadwinner and also the chief therapist, I guess, for the household. And the girls have been highly anxious and kind of on the edge for a long time, and have played the "oh my God, I may just kill myself" card a lot. Okay, to good effect from their standpoint, because it gets them what they want. I mean, this is my opinion, and she's reluctant to do anything that might push them over the edge.
Oh yeah, you get terrified.
So it's kind of a nasty stew, and so I see all that. So and it's very stressful on me too. But there's not a whole. I'm at really arm's length, and I'm wondering, is there anything that a person in my situation can do to make things better? And I will say question. that the teenagers, especially the girls, are very skillful at pushing people away. And if pressed, they can become very abusive, very verbally abusive. And while at one hand, I can feel sympathy for their situation, another level, they really piss me off. I mean, it's so it's
a lot of them, right?
It's just
a lot of, I feel like people are crippled, right? They don't know what to do. I mean, right? It just. So anyway, do you have any? Do you have any advice?
So that's
for
where I am, and so you're the expert. What do I do?
Well, I think that unfortunately it is these kids that what you just said, they're adept at pushing people away, and they're angry. There's a lot of anger, and if these children are dealing with the loss of a parent, the divorce, and the loss of the parent, and then mom probably unfortunately having to be kind of the chief cook and bottle washer, wearing of many hats, et cetera. There's probably some pretty significant anger in regards to, if you don't mind me asking, when did mom and dad get divorced, and when did he die?
The divorce was, let me think now, around 5 years ago.
Oh, that's
and it would have been earlier, except that my daughter had health issues, and she was sort of a caregiver and felt responsible. But at some point, it just got too much. And then about a year later, he expired. And it was a surprise when he did. I mean, he had all these health issues. But when he died, it was from something completely different, and no one expected it. So go figure.
And the kids, did they have a relationship with their dad?
They did, but it was a kind of a troubled one. The dad was very attentive to the son and ignored the daughters, and that was a problem. And they tried to get close to him, but he didn't want to. And then he died before anything was resolved. So
you're probably dealing with a lot of anger on these girls' parts. And you said they're 18 years old now?
17.
17. Okay, so they're getting to the place where there's a jump off point, right? Where they're first of all, they're in that place where 18, that's kind of, I can do my own thing. I'm almost an adult, not really, but that's what we think. And again, they're beginning to, and I like what you said about, like, they use that anxiety, they use that verbiage, and they don't understand the damage they do when they say those types of things. When they're talking to their mother and they're saying, I'm going to kill myself, and mom is, of course, losing her mind, trying to like, please don't do that. And it really does cripple you as a parent, because you're terrified. You cannot suicide proof your children, which is horrible when you think about that, right? You can only be there present for them. And unfortunately, you can't watch them 24/7. So kids can be highly manipulative on the best of circumstances, but these girls probably, and again, I don't know them, so this is, but they're probably pretty pissed off. And because of that, they're reacting. They're coming up to that jumping off point where they're going to be going to school, leaving home, getting an apartment, being autonomous, more autonomous, et cetera, et cetera. And that also could be potentially scary as well. They're lashing out at mom and at you potentially because, again, you two are the two people who are going to stick around. You're not going. They're probably decent with their friends. I'm assuming they have friends.
They do have friends.
Yeah. So I'm assuming. I mean, I'm assuming they're pretty decent with their own peer groups. But with you and your daughter, again, you love them. You're not going to go anywhere. They don't think you're going to go anywhere, but they're pushing you hard to make you go somewhere. They want you to prove to them that you're going to stand there and be with them for the most part until they get out of this place. And the hardship of that is that they say absolutely horrible, brutal things to you, and you want to just lock them in their room.
So really, that's what people can do is just basically grin and bear it. I mean,
Well, no, I don't want to say that. I'm saying that you don't want to fire back. You don't want to yell back. You don't want to say, you're an absolutely horrible child, or but you can say, you have to really keep your equilibrium and say something along the lines of, clearly you're upset, and I get that.
Well, actually, Carrie, I disagree because sometimes I do want to fire back.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying you do. I
want to fire back.
I'm saying it's not a good thing to do so. Trust me, I understand wanting to fire back.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that you and if you do that, you do it. I mean, ultimately, you'll have to probably come back and say you're sorry for doing that. But just because they're acting all of that stuff out, you going back at that is not going to be helpful. They're just going to prove them right. If you lose your temper with them, you've just proven them right. That
you can keep your cool. You can keep your cool, Dave.
Oh yeah.
Keeping your cool, but also staying back. I mean, you can say to them you can say to them, obviously you're upset, and I get that, but I don't want you to be talking to me that way. So listen, I love you. If you need me, I'm right here, but we need to talk about how we get through this. But if you can't, that's fine. I'm going to hang up the phone and you call me when you're ready to talk about it. And again, it's setting a boundary.
Yeah,
it's setting a healthy boundary.
Right.
If they're like, frick you, you're this, you're that. Okay, well, you know what, honey? I'm not doing that with you today. I love you. I'm here. If you need me, I'm hanging up the phone. You could do that. You could, or you could, again, if they blow up and then apologize, that's another thing that kids do sometimes. They blow up and then they come back and they say, I'm sorry, I didn't, I lost my temper, blah, blah, blah. And again, saying to them like, yeah, I understand that. I appreciate the apology. Let's move on. I don't like it when that happens. I really don't. It's kind of short and sweet with kids when they're doing this stuff. You don't want to be dragging that out. Like I said, that short and sweet aspect of things, but you also don't want to be, you pinned it. They're pushing you away. You don't want to go away.
Yeah. All right. That's an excellent point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and let me just want to say one more thing.
Yeah,
I don't know where you are. I've heard this from another therapist at one point. She said people always underestimate the alcohol budget that you need when you're raising children.
I don't know if I want to go there.
Carefully applied. Carefully applied. But I mean, as far as your daughter is concerned, also, I mean, giving her a place to vent, giving her a place to, again, she's probably a little frazzled too. So giving her a place to vent, giving her that, you don't want to attack her kids, but you want to listen to her, your grandchildren, obviously. So you want to be able to give her a space of like, how can I help? What can I do?
Yeah. Well, she's more than a little frazzled. She's sort of maximally frazzled.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, Dave, thanks for calling in. That's awesome. You're our first actual caller. You have that
You've
honor.
had like phony callers.
No. You're our first actual person to come on the show, as opposed to like writing stuff in chat. So it's nice. It's nice for you to visit us. All right. Well, thank you for calling.
Nice meeting you.
I think we actually have somebody else that wants to come.
Mark kind of like push me out. How do I leave?
I think he's going to throw. Oh, there you go.
Sorry. Bye.
No, sorry, Dave. I didn't know he was going to just throw you off like that. All right. So, a lot of people are dealing with this stuff. I mean, clearly, right? I mean, this is a universal experience. I mean, we're mostly focusing on America here, but I'm sure that there's, that this is a global problem too. I mean, but and it just sounds awful. It's like, what do you do? I mean, I am really empathetic with parents and grandparents that are, having to,
Handling it, yeah.
yes, it's tough.
Yeah,
Do we have
it's scary.
another, so I think we have another, look at that. We have a second caller on Let's Have
Hello.
Words. This is Conrad.
Hi, Conrad.
Have you met Conrad before?
I
don't
believe
know.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, this is Conrad. Conrad, ask your question. Be nice and be concise.
Well, I'm
Hit
not
it.
sure I have any questions. I have
A
comments.
comment. Okay, go ahead. What's your
I don't
comment?
have any children, so I don't need any help.
Oh, okay, well, that's good. Well, you do need help, but probably not just with your kids.
Well,
Anyway, I'm just teasing you. Go
I
ahead.
have a big kid too.
Yeah.
And I had
What's
Well,
your
I'm
comment?
all ears.
Go ahead.
So on a serious note, what you were talking about earlier, there was two things you mentioned, that this is the suicides now, because particular family problems, that's always been around. Divorces, drunks, people, all kinds of, what I mean. That was always not necessarily bad parents, but just that was always around.
Sure.
Kids never dealt with it well. That always left scars, always left the kids diminished, like messed up in some way. There's no, so I don't have no magic there. But the general suicides that are growing, that was, I thought, the main subject of the talk.
Yeah.
With the kids' depression. I just got a tweet today from New York Times about how depressed high school kids are, and the suicide levels are increasing records, so I'm like, I couldn't read it because they wanted me to subscribe, whatever, but I started reading.
Yeah.
So one comment is the social media. I never thought that social media would, could contribute, but now I think it make it worse. And my only sort of explanation is that it's too easy. People are isolated with social media. You don't have a physical contact, so it's easy to say bad things, or it's personal. It's more personal.
Yeah.
Like you can call somebody and on a phone, this is without even the video, you can, like strangers or whatever, like Facebook strangers or people you barely know. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like you hang around with friends and somebody attacks you, or it's different.
Yeah.
The same sort of.
Yeah. Well, right. I mean, it gives people they don't feel. It gives them almost permission to just say whatever the heck they want, because there aren't any immediate consequences for.
In some ways, it's good. There's more freedom. Freedom is supposed to be good, but also it's less. It's more impersonal.
Yeah.
And there's less human contact. The kids are more, and that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
Being in a
That's a really good point, Conrad. Like, so I don't know how much time we have left, but I do think that's a good point to discuss, maybe, like how much, the personal contact that humans need to have with each other, and maybe that's also contributing to the problem, because, the isolation and that our new age of, computers, internet, et cetera. Yeah, I wonder if that's also, we didn't actually mention that specifically.
Well,
but
no,
I
I
wonder
think
if that's
that
contributing to the problem as well.
Well, the problem of depression.
Depression and anxiety, like not having enough sort of just
I would
face-to-face
agree with
time
that.
with humans, with interacting with other humans in real space.
Right.
You can actually see a lot of that with people who are older, unfortunately, who may be more housebound, who don't get out with their friends, whose families are further away. You can see that when they're not, like when they, again, a phenomenon when people leave their jobs, so they're not going out of their homes and engaging with people one-on-one. That type of thing, again, can cause depression and anxiety, more depression than anxiety. But again, you'll see a lot more of that when people become less engaged with their surroundings. And again, I don't want to generalize. There are people who are introverts and who don't like spending a lot of time out in the world. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who, when they lose their connectivity, groupings, engagements through ill health, loss of work, retirement, whatever, then yes, you can see an increase in depression in that area as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, Conrad, do you have another, just quickly, if you have another question, because we got to, go ahead.
I have two more comments.
Just quick. Go ahead.
One is, Carrie also mentioned that it's harder now for kids to outdo their parents.
Yeah.
It depends who their parents were. If they were, very low level workers, then it's not true that it's easier. but a lot,
It's harder for kids to do better than their parents.
like
Yeah,
prices of
right,
housing,
yeah,
you know,
financially, yeah,
the amount of money you have to make. Again,
yeah.
it can be done, but it's harder
Yeah, the economy is not
Oh,
conducive to
yeah.
that.
now
Yeah.
than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And
Not at all.
Okay, and one more comment. Go ahead, Conrad, quick.
if you're rushing me, and this is something
I'm not rushing you. I'm sorry. We
I mean,
have to
Sorry,
we have to
Conrad.
wrap it up. We have to wrap it up.
but
Go
I've
ahead.
noticed this I've noticed this with my friends' children, with my friends' families over the years. Parents are spoiling their children.
All right. Well, that's a good. Let's leave it there. That's
Too much
let's-
love, not enough pressure to do
not enough
things.
pressure. Okay. We're gonna take your comment and we'll discuss it. We'll gnaw on it a little bit.
And as far as
But-
testing, your testing comments, testing became much easier over the years. Schools diminished over the years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Globally, this is in the States, it happened 50, 40 years ago, a long
Yeah.
time ago, or 30, but same way in other countries now. And that also makes it, the children don't have to work as hard in school. They don't have to work as hard as at home. So I think that has something to do that, again, this is.
Yeah, we didn't mention that. We didn't mention it either. We'll chew on that for a little bit. But thank you, Conrad, for coming on. You're obviously thinking very deeply about this, and it's awesome that you have so
Thank you, Conrad.
many insights.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you. So just to close, so what do you think about what he said about
Not enough discipline,
kids not having
too much
enough
love.
discipline? Yeah, too much love, as he said. Yeah. What do you think about that?
And I think it depends. Again, you don't want to generalize. I think that some
Yeah.
people were trying to make up to our children sometimes for things that we didn't have, so to speak.
Yeah.
But in the other instances, I think that some people are still fighting for their lives out there. Trying to put food on the table, roof over head, clothes on the backs, that type of thing. As far as discipline is concerned, I wonder in regards to. I've heard that argument before. Putting boundaries, I think it may not be as much discipline as boundaries too. I mean, if you do something X, Y, and Z, I'm going to do something else. Kids can push back, and we're supposed to be able to push, no, it's okay. This is still the boundary. But one of the issues with social media is that we should be taking those phones away from our children at night. Okay, you're done. You're on social media. You're done at night. We're taking it away, and kids will throw a lot of problems with that. But if we started doing that earlier on, you don't get your phone, we're mean. That's okay. We can be mean. And I think in some instances, parents are afraid to, be the bad guy.
Yeah.
A lot of times I think it's unfortunately not
Gotta find that
parents.
balance, the
It's
boundaries.
hard to balance.
Yeah. Because
And
I think what Conrad's saying with the discipline, that can definitely swing too far the other way too.
It can.
Where it's going to cause, a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Kids will
You want your
develop.
kid to be able to talk to you.
Right. You want them to
be able to
trust
talk.
you, right? You want to have a trusting relationship with your kids. You don't want
Yeah.
them to be afraid of you, right? So I mean
Absolutely.
that can go too far too. So, well,
Yeah.
people are thinking about this all the time, and we're certainly not going to solve these problems today on Let's Have
Not
Words,
yet.
but kind of the idea of Let's Have Words is just kind of to have conversation. So that's what we did. I had so many more questions for you though, and I didn't get to, but that's okay. And we had a couple callers, which was really good. Anything that you want to say that, that we left out or that you feel like is really, important?
It's a bigger thing.
message.
It's a bigger thing that's gonna get, then we can obviously tackle in this one area. I think that again, that what I was saying to your friend David there is again, kids that a lot of that anger, that's all that emotion that's coming out of them. They don't know how to deal with it, and it comes out in the worst possible ways. And whereas
Right.
adults, we want to just like I said, you want to just stop them,
Right.
yell at them, tell them to cut it out.
Right.
In a lot of instances,
Like I said, suck it up, right? That's what you
Oh
want
yeah,
to say.
suck it
Your
up.
brain's
Shut
like,
up. Suck it up.
Yeah.
And again, you can put a boundary out there that's, I don't have to, I'm not, if you want to scream at me, we're not going to do that. If you want to call me names, we're not going to do that. I'm here to listen to you. I want to help you. But if you just want to scream and yell and rant and rave, there's a limit to that.
Right.
So, I mean, you can vent, but you have to, again, I don't want you telling me that I'm a
Right.
blankety blank, whatever. I mean, I could swear.
you
But,
you can swear on it. So some of us are, it's always everything's a double-edged sword, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Like
You have
Conrad
to
was saying,
be-
quote unquote, too much love. Everything's a double-edged sword, and
And
so
you're gonna fuck it up.
You're
Let's
right.
be honest. You're gonna fuck it up.
You're gonna fuck it up,
And
yeah.
you got it. It's just a fact of life. And you have to. If you blow up at your kids, you should come back and be like, okay, I fucked that up, and I'm sorry, and I don't like where we are here. Let's
Right.
talk about that. Sometimes you can end up having a decent conversation. That's the goal. Is to and sometimes with kids too. I want to point this out too. With teenagers, if they don't want to talk, you're better to be in and out. I mean, no, you can't, and that's why, and we're done.
Right.
We're not going to talk about what they
Quick.
didn't do wrong for an hour and a half. Quick and out.
Yeah.
And if you want to talk to me later about that, that's fine, but we're not going to, so yes, it's a balancing game in a lot of different ways. And we all of us as parents, fuck it up, as people who are engaging with teenagers or adults, or, we're all going to screw it up when we're dealing with something that's emotional and we don't quite know what to do with.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would love to have you back on the show at some point so we can
Sure.
talk some more, because I just feel like there's all kinds of stuff. Like I feel like we opened up a lot of cans that I wanted to dig into,
Yeah.
and I can't because I don't have time.
Get those covers back on.
I do. So I'm hoping someday you'll come back on,
Sure.
and we can pick up where we left off and talk a little more about this sort of stuff, because
Absolutely.
and it seems like I think there's a lot of people out there that need like sort of some of these skills, like they need to know how to deal with these problems because they don't know, right? Like David,
Yeah.
when David came out, they don't know what to do,
No, and it's hard, and also giving him that kind of like, this is what, but it still didn't talk about how do you keep your temper when all you want to do is be like, shut
Right.
up,
Right,
It's hard.
exactly.
Definitely
Yeah.
hard.
All right, Carrie, it's been awesome talking to you as always.
All right.
And I'm telling you, I've just got, for full disclosure again, if Carrie hadn't been there when I was a teenager, I would not be the semi-functional adult you see before you.
Yeah, well, that's a ditto situation. I have to point that out there.
It was mutual.
But thank you very
maybe.
much for the opportunity.
Yes.
I really
It was
appreciate
awesome.
it.
It was
And yeah, if
awesome
you want me
having you on.
back, I'll certainly come back.
Wow, I will. I'm gonna take that opportunity. All right.
Sounds good.
See you later. Okay, awesome. So we have another Let's Have Words in the bag. We talked a lot about, and I feel like we ended up asking more questions than we like. I just have so many more questions. My head is spinning, but that's okay. So we had an excellent conversation with Carrie Howard, licensed professional counselor who practices in Wisconsin, and we talked about the trend in teenage anxiety and depression, which is going on. There's an increase in teenage anxiety and depression. And we talked a little bit about some of the things that might be causing that, a little bit about some of the techniques that we can use to cope with it. So thank you for coming. If you, Let's Have Words is a talk show. We meet here every week at 8 p.m. Sunday, and we love to talk about all kinds of stuff. So if you are a person who thinks you have a topic that you might want to come on Let's Have Words, and I'd be glad. We would please. There's the email right there. Please write us an email and tell us what your topic is and your role, and we will definitely entertain the possibility of having you on. And in the meantime, have a good week and keep those lines of communication open.
Let's have